Hello all my Kenvians and welcome to Discovering Classic Doctor Who. Now I did a video of me, I did my first Discovering Classic Doctor Who on the original pilot a while back. So what I'm going to be doing today is beginning my actual journey into the classic era of Doctor Who with An Unearthly Child. The original televised one, not the pilot, again. But yeah, I'm going to start with An Unearthly Child. It's going to be this episode. And I am going to do a reaction, but I guess whether or not I do a full version, so to speak, will depend on how much of a reaction the episode actually gets out of me. So if I don't really react much other than just watching, a good portion of that will be cut out, and that will be like the reaction portion itself. There won't be any full versions, because I feel like that would be kind of unnecessary. Now, I could be completely wrong, and it might be really exciting, it might be really interesting, and I might have a lot of responses. But just based on what I've heard, the classic era isn't exactly what you would do a lot of reaction videos to. So, without any further ado, let's begin An Unearthly Child and begin the first, the first numbered episode of Discovering Classic Doctor Who. And go. And just so you know, I actually haven't rewatched the original pilot, so I don't really have much of a comparison in mind as to how to compare the two, really, but that's probably for the best.
Oh, what's the trouble? Can I help?
Oh, it's one of the girls, Susan Foreman.
Susan Foreman? Oh,
Susan Foreman?
Is she your problem too?
Yeah.
You don't know what to make of her?
Yeah.
Find one. Come on, Barbara.
What's he doing out there? She is in there. Who's the dog? Barbara!
It's bigger on the inside.
Seems impossible, couldn't you?
Well, yes, but I still don't.
Not quite clear, is it? I can see by your face that you're not certain. You don't understand. I knew you wouldn't. Never mind. Now, yes. Susan, will you help us?
I mustn't.
Very well then. I'll have to risk it myself. I can't stop you.
I can't catch his life!
Trippy man. Turn that down. Okay. I'm sorry. Next episode, The Cave of Skulls. All right. Okay, so first episode of the classic Doctor Who down, An Unearthly Child. And, you know, let's just get right into it with my favorites for this episode. Really, and I wrote this down in multiple parts, but I'm going to combine them into one. My first favorite part of this episode was Susan, really. The discussion of how smart she is. Susan critiquing, like actually having a critique of the French Revolution textbook. The discussion of her oddities, like how she would react to certain things during lessons, or how she would fight back against like the use of, what is it, only 3 dimensions, I think it was, as opposed to like a 4th and 5th. And just the whole way that worked, I really liked it. It was, again, we don't know a lot about Susan at this point, but it introduces us to her as her character. It introduces us to somewhat of her personality. And I really like that about that. My next favorite part of this episode, and it should be quite obvious, the Doctor. And I'll talk more about this in my overall thoughts, but the Doctor here. Now again, I don't really recall my overall reaction and feelings when it came to the pilot, but one thing I do remember is that I remember not really liking the Doctor in the pilot. He was kind of a jerk, really, from what I can recall. And in this one, he's still stern. He's still, clearly close-minded about a lot of things, especially when it comes to humans. But he has that air about him that had I not known that this was a Doctor Who episode, had I been watching without any credits or anything like that, and I just see this guy come in, and the way he's talking and the way he's acting, seeing William Hartnell in the role in this episode, that's the Doctor. Like, it's not the same personality overall, and, I mean, the portrayal here is clearly going to be different than the portrayal I got from Twice Upon a Time, but this is the Doctor. His personality just shines through. There are clearly elements of the Doctor that have been taken throughout time, all the way into the modern era, and just some of those subtle elements, the way he smiles, the way he's very aloof, just the way he is makes it clear that he's the Doctor. And I love the fact that between that pilot and this first episode, they adjusted things enough, and William Hartnell changed his portrayal, or changed the way he approached the character enough, that this is the Doctor that we came out with. So yeah, I don't know if that made any sense or not, but that's why it's my second favorite part of this episode. And my next favorite part of this episode was the TARDIS, and getting to see, once again, the inside there, just the very simple, just the simplicity of it all. It had the round things, and as we all know, 10 and 11 love the round things. What are they? I don't know. But they love the round things. Oh, but yeah, I really enjoyed the TARDIS. I was a little bit sad that they didn't have it's bigger on the inside all the way back then. Now clearly I assume that's going to be a joke that probably catches on, I don't know, some way into Classic Who, or maybe it was something that they just came up with for modern Doctor Who, and it was always kind of implied or approached in a different way back in the classic era. But I did enjoy, even though it wasn't actually said, no, it's bigger on the inside, the way that the human characters approached it, I thought was well done, and it was realistic as to how they reacted, rather. But my next and final favorite part of this episode is Ian and Barbara. Now, I can't fully remember how much I enjoyed them back in the pilot, but the way the characters were in this, it was very authentic. There wasn't really any overacting, unless you count the shaking when the TARDIS takes off. But yeah, there was just something very authentic about the characters, their discussion back and forth about Susan. And I know that a lot of the classic era Who, it's like, it's it's in the style essentially of a stage play, or yeah, I guess that's basically right. And I would definitely believe these two in these roles had it been a stage play. So because of that, it's like I like the way it portrayed the characters. Again, we don't really have a lot of info on them. It's something that I hope will come in the coming episodes, that we'll learn a little bit more about Ian and Barbara. But as a whole, I did enjoy them, and I just feel like as a whole, they took everything from the pilot episode and gave it a fresh coat of paint. I'm not sure that's the right way to put it, but reworked the things that needed to be reworked. And just as a whole, I really do like these characters more than pretty much any of the characters when it came back to the pilot. So, okay, those are all my favorite parts. As for some annoyances, the one that just seemed strange to me, I didn't actually write this down, but when they're first at the school and the different kids go out into the hallway, and like the two girls are talking and the boys come behind and then something's whispered. There's not actually any words being said. Like it sounds like just mumbles. Like just mumbles, like blah, 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 blah. And I don't know, something like that could maybe work if you're filming a crowd scene, like telling people it's like, you know, either have conversation or pretend like you're having conversation. Like that could work, but we're focused on these people. So yeah, it just seems strange to me. Or even if they were just kind of off to the side, not front and center, kind of like in a stage play. If those kids were, again, on a stage, in a stage play, and they were over to the side and that exchange took place without any actual words being said, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But again, they're front and center in the camera, so it just looked weird to me. But I realize that's probably a huge nitpick on my part, so now moving on from there. My next annoyance, and I can only assume that this is going to be something that occurs a lot, at least in the older episodes of the classic era, the constant close-ups. Oh my god. Like, I get why, I mean, especially with the older shows, I believe this happened a lot in American cinema and TV as well. But you had a lot of close-ups, so you could get the expression of people, the proper facial expressions, especially since lighting wasn't quite what it is now back then. So I kind of get why, but the close-ups were happening a lot, and there were even portions where it seemed like parts of the face got cut off by the camera. So yeah, I mean that was just annoying to me. Again, I understand possibly why it was done, but in general, I just didn't care for it. And I won't complain about it more in the future unless it's just extremely in your face. I'm sorry. But yeah, it was just something that bothered me, but I expect it'll probably happen at the very least for a little while in the show still. And then my last annoyance was in the script. The whole aspect of these teachers telling Susan that all of this is an illusion. I feel like there were words to put it differently. Like, I don't fully think that they're referring to what they're seeing as an illusion, because how the heck would you do that? But rather that their backstory, that they're from a different time and place, they're from outer space, they're from a different planet, like it's made up, or she's been fed lies, something like that. But just saying it's an illusion, unless that was sort of how the term was used back in the 60s, it irks me because it feels inaccurate. Or it feels like an inaccurate term to describe what's actually going on. Again, that's just my perspective on it. If I'm kind of just not getting the terminology properly there, please do let me know. I'm intrigued to know whether or not that's the case. Now I'm going off of my old, my Doctor Who script from the other episodes, so I'm going to skip through a couple of categories here just because, clearly there's no real moment of terror, at least not for me. No questions per se, at least at this time. If I had to say there was a track of the episode, honestly, the only track I can actually even think of is the intro theme. And in my personal opinion, it does pale in comparison to a lot of the, Doctor Who themes that we've gotten from the new era. But the fact that it is the classic theme, the original theme of Doctor Who, I just have to give it up for that. And I really enjoy hearing that classic tune, and it's something that I'll get to hear quite a few times going forward as well. So, yeah, that's track of the episode. I guess you could also say maybe like the song that Susan was listening to, but yeah, sure. But I prefer the Doctor Who track. As for a quote of the episode, I would honestly say just about anything that the Doctor said in this episode, like all of his back and forth with Ian and Barbara. It was just part of his personality. It was the portrayal of that personality that even if I didn't know that this was Doctor Who, I would recognize him as the Doctor because of the way he's talking, the way that he tries to misdirect, the way that he's seemingly always a few steps ahead, even us as the viewers, all the way back then. So I really like that. But one quote that stood out to me, at least insofar as I could write it down, was when Ian was demanding to get out and he was saying that he was going to take control and open the door himself. The Doctor simply just says, "I can't stop you." And it was just, again, it's that whole personality of the Doctor. Even though it's, all the way back in the 60s at this point, it's still the Doctor. Part of that personality has seemingly never left him, again, going all the way into the modern era. So, yes, love that. As for a theory, you don't really have any overarching theory at this point, but based on the final screen, it's clear to me that it's gone back to a primitive age, time of cavemen, I assume, and that the creature or person whose shadow is being cast is a caveman. So that's my theory. I don't really know much where I can go from there. But yeah, getting into my overall thoughts on this episode. Again, at this point, I don't know how much I actually left in for the reaction portion, but I actually did enjoy it. It gripped me and pulled me in a lot faster and more effectively than the pilot did by far. Again, I don't remember everything from when I watched the pilot, but the filming was overall better. And it could be a difference of the quality overall, like they may not have restored the original pilot to the same degree that they did, this episode, but I felt like the quality was better. The portrayal of the Doctor was so much better. Again, still stern, still, close-minded, but he just had that thing about him, that aspect of his personality that just says the Doctor, whereas in the pilot, again, he was just kind of a jerk, like an old, grumpy jerk that was just kind of mean to everyone. Whereas in this one, even when he's being stern with Susan, when he's, trying to misdirect and get the humans to shut up, he's smiling almost the whole time. It's like, because again, he's clearly the smartest person in the room, despite how smart Susan is, apparently. So yeah, I really love that aspect, and probably one of my favorite parts is the fact that Susan seemed more human here. It's like in the pilot, she was clearly alien, like, you know, she was an alien trying to fit into the human world, but the mannerisms that I wrote it down. Carol Ann Ford, the woman that plays Susan, like the way she portrayed Susan this time, and again, it could have been part of the direction as well. She had more of a human aspect to her. She wasn't clearly alien. Like, there were some of the mistakes, well, not mistakes, but like things that the teachers found strange about her, but as a whole, she acted like a human, just a different human, a human with a different kind of personality. So yeah, I like the way that was portrayed. But yeah, just as a whole, really enjoyed this pilot, honestly. Again, I don't know if it came through in the reaction, but I really did enjoy this episode. And it has me looking forward to watching the next one, The Cave of Skulls. And actually, based on the fact that the word cave is in the title, I'm guessing maybe that confirms my assumption that it's a caveman that they're going to run into. I don't know. But yeah. So that's all I have to say about this episode. Everyone, thank you very much for being here for the first official episode of Discovering Classic Doctor Who. If you are interested in watching other episodes like this in the future, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to see episodes like this before they go live, as soon as I get them uploaded, you can become a patron over at Patreon for as little as $1 a month, and you'll get access to all of my videos, all of my episodes, as soon as they are uploaded, anywhere from a day maybe to a week or two ahead of time. So hopefully that's a little bit of an incentive if you're interested at all. And I'm actually going to be watching The Cave of Skulls here in just a moment, and go ahead and get that recorded. So The Cave of Skulls should be uploaded not long after this one does. So yeah. Again, everyone, thank you so much for being here. I would like to hear your thoughts on this episode. Again, you know, some of your favorite aspects, some annoyances you might have had, your thoughts on what I had to say. But until next time, everyone, I'm Papa Kenn, and I will see you in the next episode of Discovering Classic Doctor Who. Allons-y!